What has driven me for decades is the belief that this country made a promise: if you come here and you work at it, you can belong. To become an American is the promise of belonging that no other country really can offer in the same way we have. And keeping that alive has been a great source of determination for me. Still is, always will be. Ultimately, the great cities of the future will be those that can turn desperation into participation. And for me, that is the only measure of a great city, is whether or not it's a good container for human aspiration. We sought a methodology of studying things through a different lens. Not the lens of what's wrong, but a lens that said how do we discover and unearth what's already working here? Who really cares deeply about this community? Who's already made things better for themselves and their neighbors? How did they go about it? We believe that if you invest in what people are already working toward, that's the best way to help people move forward. So broadly, Baker Ripley is a community development organization. Across the 70 locations, you'll see almost any activity that would help a low-income family or community move forward. So it ends up being about 1,500 staff and 7,000 volunteers working to help 500,000 people move forward.
We are proud. We are proud. Of where we come from. Of where we come from.
So you will see a school here, a credit union, a place to bank, a tax center. There's a place for families together. We call it a reunion hall. Immigration services for people trying to navigate a really broken immigration system. The thought behind it is to put all the elements together that make a neighborhood and community strong and organize it so that it's seamless and people come and can feel welcome, like there is a real place for them to begin a new life. So we're really well known for appreciative community building. It's a term we developed to describe the way we see communities, the way we see people. There's an old way of thinking about how we work with poor neighborhoods, how we work with poor families, poor communities. And that way of thinking was a deficit model approach. And it's troubling because when we saw neighborhoods and communities in terms of problems, it didn't take long before we began to see the people as the problem. And we believe strongly that people hold all the solutions. And there are strengths and assets in every community, and people arrive with their own deeply held and deeply valued aspirations for themselves and their families. And we think that's just a fundamental, strong foundation to build on. The human spirit is not extinguishable. So it becomes a question of then, what are we to do? What can we do for one another? And I believe there are two things that we can do to improve the human condition. One is the way we work with one another to develop potential, what we are willing to teach and share and learn from one another. And the second is, what can we do to eliminate the unnecessary suffering? Much of what happens is beyond our control, but there's a great deal of what goes on that's a product of imperfect political systems, imperfect economic systems. If we believe that they're simply imperfect systems and not broken people, then we can go about addressing those imperfections in a way that eliminates unnecessary suffering. So the most powerful thing we can do is bring people together to make it so that neighbors live as friends. It's a very powerful way to build a city and a country, that neighbors live as friends. Because when we come to understand one another, to know one another, we find we're alike and we have a shared destiny.